Hi guys, Jamie here. So today I just wanted to discuss, this is in response to a study that I was just reading about online by experts that said that three of the worst foods to consume for, um, diabetes, or they're saying that the likelihood of getting diabetes is because of these three foods. And all these three foods I consume, okay? And that is sugar, like processed sugar, juice, and starches, okay? And when they were talking about starches, they were talking about things like pasta, potatoes, uh, like pizzas, and they probably were including processed foods as well. And so they're saying, but they're trying to demonize the starches and the sugar. Okay, they're saying that you will have diabetes, most likely if you include these three foods in your diet. And I have all these foods in my diet, and the thing that they're not telling you, and one has to wonder if they know that they're omitting the truth. Okay, it's like they're kind of being truthful but not really, and they're not telling you the most important facts. So they're getting everyone to believe that it's the sugar, that it don't have sugar, processed sugar, don't have juice, don't have processed foods, and don't eat starches. Okay, and so yeah, one has to wonder if this is intentional. I'm starting to think that it is. um, and you're being deceived. And when you're deceived, it's going to keep you in the dark, the truth about what is really going to help you uh, be healthy and what isn't. Okay, so we need to, so this study was absolute bullshit. And what they're not telling you and what you need to know is okay, I eat these foods every day. Okay, starches, juice, and processed sugar. And but the key is, what they're not telling you about these foods is that processed foods usually have sugar and fat, okay? And the starches that they're talking about, fries, mashed potatoes, again, these usually have oil. Fries are deep fried in tons of oil. Like, I don't even know how many grams of fat are in serving a deep fried fries, but it's probably astronomical. Um, yeah, and then if you have mashed potatoes or anything with potatoes, people usually have butter and milk and cream and cheese, very high fat foods, okay? And then they're talking about pizza. Again, pizza, typically fat and sugar together. So you have carbohydrates, but the problem is not the carbohydrates, it's the fact that you've loaded it up with maybe things like olives or cheese or bacon or ground beef, right? Um, and then pasta, again, pasta is usually carbs, right? And it's not the carbs that are the problem, but it's what you add to it. And most of the time, there's a creamy sauce. Like to pasta, people usually mix in eggs and cream and loads of cheese. No one's really eating pasta with just a fat-free marinara sauce. It's not happening. Most people are not eating fries that aren't deep fried in oil, and most people aren't eating mashed potatoes that aren't covered in like a thick gravy of cream and cheese and milk. Okay, so yes, those foods. See, and this is where they're sneaky, because those foods can cause and lead to diabetes, but it's because the fat and sugar are together. But the sugar's not the problem, because you run on glucose, you run on sugar, okay? And you want to get in as much fruit, ideally from fruit, okay? Honey, maple syrup, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and then things like rice and pasta. That is what you want to eat, okay? What you don't want is to add the fat, okay? So the fat is what's causing the problem, okay? So insulin is released by your pancreas, okay? And then insulin carries the sugar into the cell, okay? And then once it does that, it's supposed to go back down, all right? But when you have fat in with your food, okay, like let's just say pasta, you've added a bunch of, cheese and milk and dairy to it. Now you got fat and sugar together. So now the fat is blocking Okay, so the insulin is being released to get the sugar into the cell, but now the fat is in the bloodstream. It's blocking, okay, the sugar from getting into the cell, and now you have insulin resistance. Okay, there's a resistance there, and it's not because of the sugar, it's because of the fat. Now if you were to take that fat out and just eat pasta, like a whole wheat pasta, a corn pasta, a brown rice pasta, okay, that has no overt fats in it, you would not have the insulin resistance. You would actually have insulin sensitivity. So um, so you don't want to eliminate the carbohydrates and the sugar. Okay, this is what your brain runs on and every cell in your body runs on. Okay, when you start to restrict, you are going to severely suffer. Okay, and then you'll be addicted to things like caffeine and stimulants and other drugs. So in these studies, they're very misleading. They kind of give you like this tidbit of truth. Okay, but and that's the fact that yes, processed foods with fat and sugar will lead to insulin resistance and maybe pre-diabetes or even diabetes. That is true, but they're demonizing the sugar as if the sugar is a problem, and they're telling you in this article, so instead of eating those foods, they're telling you, they're encouraging you to eat high protein, high fat foods, nut butters, avocados, meat, fish, eggs. No, no, no. This isn't what we want. And I'm starting to become convinced that it's being done intentionally, because you have to understand that these are all connected to big industries, okay? And who funded this study? It's usually, there's always linked to the meat and dairy industry and big pharma. And I hate to say this, but unfortunately, you don't make people money when you're healthy. You make people money when you're sick. And that's just the truth, okay? It's not a nice truth, but it's important to know the truth. Otherwise, you're just going to be suffering for the rest of your life because of the confusion that they're intentionally putting out there. Okay, so that's what we don't want. Okay, guys, so don't be afraid of carbohydrates. Okay, so the three things that they said were going to lead to diabetes, I consume every day, but the difference is I don't have it with fat. I have it in the absence of fat, okay? And this is very important, because if you are going to do high carb, you have to be really disciplined with eliminating the fat, because if you don't and you start putting nut butters in your fruit smoothies or protein powder and coconut milk, you will have these very issues that we're trying to get away from, okay? So it's really important. I probably sound like a dead horse repeating this message, but people just don't realize how fat sneaks up, okay, in dishes so easily, and it adds up real quick. So don't be afraid of fruit juice, don't be afraid of processed sugar, and don't be afraid of starches, okay? You just don't want to put the fat in with them, okay? So I would just drink juice on its own. If I was to use sugar, I'll put it in a banana smoothie or a fruit smoothie, okay, with no overt fats, no nut butters, no nuts or seeds, no avocado, no coconut milk, no yogurt, no cheese, and no nothing. Okay, I don't know if people are putting cheese on smoothies, but you just never know. But yeah, so you don't want to put the fat in there. Okay, and if you're making fries, don't spray it with a bunch of oil. I know that that's the tendency, but we got to get away from this if we want to have optimal health. Okay, and if you want to lose weight and get lean and feel your best, you have to get away from these fats. So if you're going to make potatoes, just cut up potatoes and put just some spices or salt on it, and put them in the air fryer in the oven, and don't have it with salt. And maybe you could eat it with some ketchup or barbecue sauce or anything that's a low fat sauce, okay? But yeah, so yeah, this study was bullshit, and this is the kind of stuff that's going to keep people confused forever, because the messaging is so confusing out there, okay? But I'm here to set the record straight and make this message very clear that we run on sugar, on carbohydrates. You should never restrict them. What you need to do is get rid of the fat, okay? So that means I would leave fat for the end of the day if you are going to have it. So if you're going to have avocado, coconut milk, dairy, eggs, meat, fish, have it at the end of the day, okay? And keep your whole day just carbohydrates, free from fat, okay? So, yeah. So that's my message for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll be back again for another video. Thanks, guys. Bye.